You promised yourself you'd start saving this month. You meant it. That's the strange part. You weren't lying to yourself. You sat down, you looked at the numbers, and you made a decision. And then somebody else spent the money. Not a thief, not a mistake. You. 3 weeks later, standing in a checkout, feeling entirely reasonable. Somewhere between deciding and doing, the decision stopped belonging to you. Because the person who made that promise and the person who had to keep it are not the same person. Not to your brain. Here's what nobody tells you. This isn't one problem. It's one entry on a much longer list of ways your brain quietly works against your own money. We're working through all of them. Today, why saving feels impossible even when you genuinely want it. Think about the last time you moved money into savings and it felt like losing it. Not spending it, losing it. A small, irrational flinch, as though you'd handed cash to somebody on the street and were never getting it back. You probably filed that under discipline, or the lack of it. It isn't discipline. In 2009, Hal Hershfield put people in a brain scanner. Think about yourself. Now a stranger. Now yourself in 10 years. There's a region in your brain that fires one way for you and another way for someone you've never met. Thinking about their future selves, it did the stranger thing. You're not refusing to save. You're being asked to fund a stranger. And there's a detail in that scanner data that should genuinely unsettle you. The size of the gap predicted the behavior. The more a person's brain treated future them like a stranger, the more they chose money now over more money later. The distance in the scan showed up as a decision in the wallet. So when you sit down to save, this is what your brain is actually being asked to do. Take money that is real and warm and yours and hand it to someone it does not recognize. Try this. $50 today or $100 in a year. Most people take the 50. You probably would too. And you'd feel a little bad about it. Impatient, short-sighted, bad with money. Now run it again. 50 in 5 years, or 106. Suddenly, you'll wait. Same 12-month gap, same money. Nothing changed except how far away it started, and your answer flipped. Value doesn't fade smoothly. It falls off a cliff at the edge of right now, then flattens. You're not impatient, you just can't see the cliff you're standing on. This is called a preference reversal, and it has been reproduced for decades. Richard Thaler documented it in the early 80s, and it broke the tidy economic idea that people simply value the future a little less than the present. Because you don't value the future a little less, you value now absurdly, catastrophically more. Which is why 5 years and 6 years feel almost identical. They're both past the cliff, and today and next year do not. Standing at a distance, you're patient and sensible and quite good with money. Standing at the edge, you are a completely different negotiator. So why does the plan keep failing at exactly the same point? Because of when you write it. George Lowenstein at Carnegie Mellon spent years on something called the hot-cold empathy gap. The finding is uncomfortable and very hard to argue with. You cannot accurately simulate a mental state you are not currently in. When you've just eaten, you cannot imagine being hungry. You'll buy small. When you're calm, you cannot imagine panic. You'll plan bravely. And when you have just been paid, you cannot imagine being broke. So the budget gets written on payday. By a version of you who is warm and solvent and slightly smug. Payday you is an optimist with no skin in the game. Payday you has never met the dread that arrives on the 19th. Quick one, and only because you're still here, which already beats most people's attention span. If the way your own brain works against you fascinates you as much as it unsettles you, that's the whole channel. Why your brain is bad with money. Hit subscribe, and the next one's already loaded. Why you spend completely differently with a card than you do with cash. And why your brain barely registers one of them as spending at all. Right, back to it. And then there's the escape hatch. Researchers at Wharton, Hung-Chen Dai, Catherine Milkman, and Jason Reese described what they called the fresh start effect. Certain dates make you feel like a new person. A Monday, the first of the month, a birthday, January. That feeling is real, and it genuinely does help people begin things. But it has a shadow. If a landmark can turn you into a new person, then it can also turn the failure into somebody else's. The old you overspent. The new you starts clean on the 1st. Which is how next month quietly becomes a renewable resource. Somewhere, you have seen a number for how much you're supposed to have saved by the time you retire. And you felt nothing. A flicker of guilt, maybe. Then nothing. You probably assume the fix is more money. That once you earn enough, or once it's close enough to be frightening, you'll finally start caring. It isn't more money. In 2011, researchers photographed people, digitally aged them, jowls, gray hair, lines, and put that face into a virtual mirror. You meet yourself at 70. Then you're asked to split a windfall. The ones who looked their older face in the eye put roughly twice as much into savings. Twice! Nobody's salary changed. They just met the person the money was for. Nobody was handed new information about compound interest. Nobody sat through a lecture on the importance of saving. Nobody's circumstances moved by a single dollar. They looked at a photograph for a few minutes. That is the entire intervention. A picture. And the reason it worked should probably bother you. They didn't learn anything new about the money. They just met the person the money was for. Here's the frustrating part. Knowing all of this does almost nothing. You can't talk yourself out of it because the sorting happens before you get a say. By the time the thought, "I should save this," arrives, your brain has already quietly filed the recipient as someone else. Willpower shows up late to a decision that's already been made and takes the blame for it. Which is why the thing that actually moves the needle in the research isn't willpower at all. It's timing. Richard Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi built a program around exactly this and published it in 2004. Here's the setup. Employees at a company sat down with a financial advisor who told them, reasonably, that they should be saving more. And they said no. Present you is the one who pays, and present you had other plans. So the researchers made a different offer. Don't save more now. Just agree, in advance, to put away part of your next pay rise. Money you don't have yet. Money that hasn't arrived. 78% of them said yes. And over the next 40 months, the average savings rate among the people who joined went from 3.5% of their income to 13.6%. Nothing about their salary changed. Nobody took a pay cut. That's the trick. The money was never in their hands to begin with. The only thing that changed was who had to pay. Now, one honest note, because it matters. Those people chose to join. Nobody forced them. So we can't be certain the programs did all the work. Some of them may simply have been the sort of people who were ready to save anyway. Good science admits that. But the shape of the thing still stands, and you can feel it in yourself. Ask present you to give up money today, and you will fight. Ask present you to give up money that doesn't exist yet, and you will barely notice. Because when the cost lands on future you, present you is suddenly a very generous, very responsible person, which is either a devastating insight into human nature or an extremely useful loophole, depending on how charitable you're feeling. The stranger, for once, doesn't get a vote. So you didn't fail to save. You made an honest promise on behalf of someone your brain had already decided it doesn't know. And then, 3 weeks later, that person turned up, hungry, tired, and holding your card. You're not bad with money, you're just outnumbered. How many days after payday does your money actually last? Just give me the number.